Today we're going to start our learning of decimals. So decimals are a great thing that we're going to be working on and learning with. It's very, very similar to whole numbers. Remember, whole numbers are any number that doesn't have a decimal or a fraction. So our I can, for the day we have two of them, I can determine place value of numbers in decimal form. This will start to sound a little bit familiar as you talked about it a little bit in fourth grade. Next, we're going to write decimals in standard, expanded, and word form. Those should sound very familiar because you know what standard, expanded, and word form is. Let's go ahead and just remember. Let's say I had 731. You do not need to write this down, just paying attention. In standard, that is standard. In expanded, you would write 7 times 100 because it's in the hundreds place, plus 3 times 10 because it's in the tens place, plus 1 times 1 because it's in the ones place. And word form, again, we would just write 731. Now, a lot of you used to say 731. I'd be like, no, you cannot say that. And you've asked me why. Well, the reason why is because of today. Because today we're going to get into decimals. And whenever you see that decimal point, that's when you say and. So I'm going to jump into a different program that's pretty interesting. So we can talk a little bit about base 10 blocks as decimals. Because as of right now, you think of base 10 blocks as being this is 100, this is 10, and that's 1. So this would be 111 because you would have 110 and 1. But the way we're going to think about it now is actually in decimal form. So I'm going to take my little writing tool. Writing tool. There we go. And we used to think of this as 100, but now we're going to think of this as the whole number 1. Just a 1. And we're going to think of there being a period here. Now this is another 1, but this is coming after the period, and then another 1. So this is now a whole number, the whole big flat. And then this is going to be your tenths, because one big rod is equal to 10 rods inside of the one hole. So our one big rod we're going to think of as 1/10. And then our small square that's now drawing a circle is going to be our hundredth. So we've got ones, tenths, and hundredths there. Now you might say that sounds familiar, but it sounds like you're talking weird. But when we get to our decimals, the way we say decimals is like the complete opposite of place value. We just add a TH on it. So instead of having your thousands place, used to be thousands, and then hundreds, and then tens, and then ones. Now we just go backwards and we say tenths, hundredths, and thousandths. So it's almost like a mirror. So you can see our tenths and our tenths, our hundreds and our hundredths, and our thousandths and our thousandths. It's almost mirrored across. And that's what we're really going to be working on today is how to say those decimals. Oops, getting a little messy already. So let's jump into the very top section of your notes. And it says place value of decimals. It gives us the number 3.275. So the way we're going to read this is 3, and that decimal point is always an and, 275,000. So the way we read it that way is you read your 3 like normal, and then you just go ahead and read these final 3 numbers. You read 275, just like you would read 275, and then you add thousandths to the end because that's the place value that the 5 is in. Like if I was to say 5,000, that's the last number that actually is a number because 0 isn't. So 5,000 is the way you would read that. 5 thousandths. If there was no 5 there, it would be 3 and 27 hundredths. The last decimal number is the way you read that. So first things first, we're going to do standard and word form. So this 3 in the ones place, we know in word form that just is the number 3. Super happy about that. This 2 in the tenths place, 1 to the right of the decimal point, is 2 tenths. Make sure you're filling in your notes with me. That's how you would read that. 2/10. Next, we've got the 7 in the hundredths place, and we would read that as 7/100ths. It's gonna be a tight fit. 7/100ths, because the 7 is in the hundredths place. Last, we have 5/1000ths, because the 5 is in the thousandths place. So we read that as 3 and 275 thousandths. Beautiful. Now let's go to expanded form. We know that 3 would be 3 times 1 because it's in the ones place. Super easy. This 2/10ths would be 2 times 1/10, or 1/10. 2 times 1/10. This 7 would be 7 times 100th because the 7 is in the hundredths place. And your 5 would be 5 times 1,000th because it's in the thousandths place. Let's go ahead and write them down here just to make sure we've got it all correct. Our standard form, 3.275. We read that as word form. Let's write it. Remember, you can always pause the video if you need to catch up. 3 and, because the decimal point is an and, 275 thousandths. 275 thousandths. And then in expanded form, we're just going to put a parentheses around, just like we did for whole numbers. We have 3 times 1 plus 2 times 1/10 plus 7 times 100th plus 5 times 1,000th. Beautiful. Now we're going to spend a lot more time practicing all of that. Let's find the value first. So go ahead and move to number 1 with me. So for number 1 right here, I can see that we have a whole number in the ones place. I'm going to draw a little O above it. And then the next place is the tenths, hundredths, thousandths place. So I can see that the 9 is in the thousandths place. So its value is going to be 9 thousandths. Let's go ahead and write that in word form. I think that's how I want to write it. So go ahead and write that in word form. 9 thousandths. We could write it in standard form as well. Let's leave it like that. 9 thousandths. Now number 2, we can see that the 9 is in the ones place. We have our decimal point. The 4 is in the tenths. 3 is in the hundredths. 1 is in the thousandths. So I know that 4 is in the tenths, so it's going to be 4 tenths is the value of that 4 in the tenths place. I think you probably have a really good handle on this. I'm going to have you do the next 3. Go ahead to number 3. Think about what place those numbers are in and tell me the value of the 6. I hope you said ones place, tenths, hundredths, thousandths. That means that that 6 is worth 6 thousandths because it's in the thousandths place. Thousandths. It's hard to spell sometimes. All right, number 4, take a look at that 1 that is underlined. Tell me what place value it is. What is the value of that 1? For this one, I hope you read it as 1 and 608 thousandths. So that means that 1 is in the hundredths place. So we're going to say 100ths. Perfect. Last but not least, go ahead and look at number 5. Tell me what the value of that 3 is. For this one, we have 8 and 3,000th because that 3 is in the thousandths place. Beautiful. I hope your notes look just like mine. Hopefully not quite as messy. Let's jump over here to number 7. Write each number in 2 other forms. This first one says 0 and 739 thousandths. So, the 0 and, I don't really care if you say that or not. You can say 0 and 739 thousandths, or you could just say 739 thousandths. It really doesn't matter. We are going to write our 0 in for this part, though. For the word form, I'm going to write 0. And remember that decimal point is always an and. 739 thousandths. And let's remember why we read it like that. You read that 739 like it was a number on its own, and then that last number, you tell me what place value it's in. 739 thousandths. Beautiful. Let's write it in expanded form. I am going to skip the 0 for expanded form because I don't think we need to put it. So let's start with that 7. 7 times, look at that place value of that 7. It is in the tenths place. We're going to say 7 times 1/10. Plus, your next number is 3 times the place value of that 3 is in the hundredths. So 1/100th. Plus 9 times 1,000th because the 9 is in the thousandths place. Looks good, looks good. Let's move on to number 8. 8. I'm going to have you go ahead and do this one. I want you to choose the correct word form, and then we'll do expanded. All right, for this, you should have read this as 1 and 805 thousandths. So let's read it and see if you picked the correct one. We have 1 and 805 thousandths. Beautiful, beautiful. Hope you got that. If you did not, make sure you're fixing that answer and try the expanded form. For this one, I hope you said 1. Oop, that does not look like a 1. Let me fix that. 1 times 1, because the 1's in the ones place, plus 8 times 1/10, because the 8 is in the tenths place, plus, you could put the 0, but you do not have to, 5 times 1,000th. Looks good, looks good. Last one. Go ahead and try the standard form on your own. Sorry. Go ahead and try the word form on your own. All right, you should have written 6 and 29 hundredths. So this one looks a little bit different than the other ones we have done. Let's think about why. There's only 2 places after the decimal here, so we don't even get to thousandths. We stop at hundredths. So we read the number 29 just like you would read any 29. And then we add hundredths because the 9 is in the hundredths place. I hope you got that one correct. Go ahead and try the expanded form. For this one, you should have said 6 times 1 because the 6 is in the ones place, plus 2 times 1/10 because the 2 is in the tenths place, plus 9 times 100th because the 9 is in the hundredths place. Looking good, looking good. I hope your notes look just like mine. Oops. Make sure they get folded the way they're supposed to and glued down in your math notebook before you get started on that classwork.